All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. Today, we have Blake Morar. He is on 30A with Scenic Sotheby's International Realty, a top 1% producer on the Panhandle and owner of an office that is the top producer in volume for 3 consecutive years on the Emerald Coast. Blake, it's so good to have you. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, Jere. Thanks for having me.
You're awesome. So I'm excited, everybody. I know Blake. He's got so many nuggets and so much good advice. I'll just try to stay focused and hone this in for us because he does have a lot of good stuff. But start with us and just tell us a little bit about, life before real estate and how and why you got into the business.
Life before real estate. So I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I went to school at Louisiana Tech, which is in the north part of the state. I ended up getting a degree in marketing and knew I loved sales. And as far as what I wanted to do, I wasn't sure of until the last semester of college. And so I had a lot of friends that were doing pharmaceuticals, great benefits, good, nice, safe play out of college, make mom and dad happy. And then the way that all unfolded, I thought, is this really what I wanted to do? But I always loved real estate, but I didn't really want to sell real estate in my natural market, being Baton Rouge. And my whole father's family, my entire father's side is from Panama City. So we grew up coming here and vacationing. And so I thought, before I take a position doing that, why don't I come down here, see if there's something for me in real estate? I was 23 at the time and ended up getting some interviews with a few different brokers on short notice. Came down here for a weekend, met with those brokers, and walked away thinking, if anybody really wants to do this, they've got the passion for it. I remember thinking to myself, I'm not married. I had no girlfriend at the time. I have no cat, no dog. If I don't take this chance now, I never will. So I took the chance and I moved here when I was 23 years old. And
here you are.
Here I am. So I got into the business then. That was 1996. So just to give you case in point, the market was very neutral. The wind really wasn't blowing one way or the other for buyers or sellers. It was just kind of felt like it was the only market I knew at the time, but it wasn't one of these places that was nearly as exciting as it is now.
Wow. Well, that was so you kind of had to invent and create your way. And tell us a little bit about how, you get into real estate. Everybody has an idea of what it's going to be like. It sounds like you at least had an inkling that it was going to be a challenge. And was it a challenge, or how was it getting into it and kind of finding your way into luxury real estate and the owner of Scenic Sotheby's now?
Oh, gosh. It's a long story. So I've been doing it 21 years now. And when I first got into the business, I think it'd be safe to say I got a bit of a slow start. I didn't really have anybody to mentor me. So I just had to ask my own questions, find my own people. I didn't have a lot of people here that I knew that I could lean on. I had a couple that were, really, really important at the time, but nobody that I got to look at and model to say, hey, I really want to do business like this or that. So I really did have to find my own way. And it took me a little while. So I ended up getting a position on site, somewhat sort of a pseudo on-site position at the flagship condo in Destin, which was built in the late 70s. And people would walk in occasionally and I would, show them different properties. And I remember walking with this one family up to look at a condo, and they were looking at it. There was really just nothing really compelling about it. I remember this was, like I said, 96. I look down, I'm looking at shag carpet. I look up, I'm looking at 8-foot popcorn ceilings. And on the sides, there was paneling on the sides of the condo. And I'm just thinking to myself,
right,
gosh, I may just go broke doing this. I wasn't excited about the product. The people were not responding well. For such an emotional experience, it just wasn't the type of emotions I really want to be a part of. So I was thinking, what can I do different? Because this is just not great. It just didn't seem like. So a lot of it is elimination. And I think a lot of it too was getting to a place where I had some confidence, where I could learn one product and learn it well. So I ended up going to work with a developer, and I ended up learning that product extremely well. It was a big confidence booster for me, to where I could get and I'd be in dialogue with someone to get to the point where they really couldn't stump me on product. Mm-hmm. And I also had the ability to do general real estate, which is essentially what I ended up loving to do. But to get back into the luxury pieces, at the time I wasn't especially a good presenter. I didn't feel great about that, but I was excited about the product. And so a lot of trainers and those types of things, they'll tell you how to network and those things. And I was working on doing some of this. Now, keep in mind, I'm 23, 24 years old at this time. And one of the things I decided to do is that I wanted to go after the real estate that I wanted. Like I wanted to be a part of. And then I dealt with the people that just so happened to own real estate. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it was sort of a reverse prospecting where I started with the product and then dealt with the client. And so I really just got on the phones and started talking to people about what their goals were for their real estate. And I had people that were looking for certain types of property. So I would just pick up the phone and talk to people. So I think it was really, it was the willingness to get on the phone and talk to people was a good way where I started to get a real taste for it.
Well, so there's three things I hear you talk about. First, you talk about passion. And then you talk about you realized you weren't passionate. You had to find it. You got passionate. Then you had to get some confidence, especially as you're stepping into luxury real estate. And then the third thing is learning it, which I think all of those three kind of feed on one another. But as you got into the business, you also learned it so you could speak more confidently. So then you had even more passion about it, which what I would love to know is, first, how did it take a minute? Did it feel pretty challenging on the front end getting into business, or did it take off for you, or were you just kind of a natural or lucky, or
no?
How would you describe it?
It didn't take off. I had a flat beginning. Mm-hmm. I was frustrated, but I just had this oozing passion, and so a lot of it was looking how am I going to contain it, right? Because I really was very career oriented. And I really wanted to figure this animal out. I wanted to wrestle this thing to the mat and figure it out. And, as you know, it's a very daunting process. So where do I start? So, I started with the real estate, ended up dealing with the people. Yeah. So the passion was really important. So I really had to like who I was dealing with. Like that's where I would really excel, is when I could really connect with the people and really connect with the product. So that's where it started to really click for me.
Well, and I love that because you talk about I think if people get into this business, then there's this perception that you just go after the client. You just go after the business, and you did the opposite. You understood the product, and by understanding the product, being knowledgeable, and obviously you were passionate and confident, you attracted the client. Would that kind of summarize it a little bit? Yeah. So the question that I have, and I think we've answered it, but I'd love for you to tell me if we've answered it or if there's more you would say is, so first of all, we all know you're basically in 30A, Rosemary Beach, or what would you call your market? I think Rosemary, Seaside, Watercolor, those are your markets. I would assume that's a very competitive market. That's like everybody's dream to be a top broker on 30A.
That's correct.
So I say that to say that you're probably in a pretty competitive industry. Being a real estate agent's already a competitive career or industry to be in. What is it that gives you that edge, or that people come to you first, or that you are, so consistently a top producer in your market?
Well, I think it's knowing what my strengths are, understanding my weakness. And, it's always figuring that out. I think what makes me really a differentiator is subscribing to a process, having rhyme and reason as to how I go about it. At this stage in my career, I really do the majority of listings. I do deal with some buyers, but I've got a small team and with people that specifically handle buyers. And then myself and Carrie, she and I work together, and we work on the listing side of it as well. So my real passion is the listing side. I love working with the seller. And so the rhyme and reason is specific about how we go about, getting those listings, how we go about preparing them. So I would say being well prepared is absolutely key.
So your competitive edge, I mean, you've got so many: well prepared, confidence, passion, and knowing your market. I mean, that's kind of where we started. But something you just said was know your weakness. Tell us a little bit about that.
Woo! Many. Many. My weakness is when I don't really love the property or the people, or, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like the good fit, but yet you're kind of limping through the process. Mm-hmm. I would say my weakness is to somehow not be in alignment of that this is really not the best fit. And either they end up awarding another agent with that business. I mean, that's really it. Ultimately when you lose the listing,
finish what you were saying.
Well, it's really just staying in alignment and knowing what you really want to do, right? And not because every time I say yes to this, even if it's a limpy, willy-nilly yes, you're saying no to something else.
You're still saying no to something else that you probably would have.
And so. Yeah, so it's really setting those things you don't really want to do, setting them aside, pairing them up with another agent in the office, another team member, getting that to move on. And certainly we're serving that client. So it's having the passion about serving that client and then concentrating more on those things that you really do want to be doing. Mm-hmm.
And so you said, when I asked you your competitive edge, know your weakness, so do what you're good at. But the other one was, you said subscribe to a process. So I'd love to know. I'm always, I think a lot of people's agents aren't, most agents are probably a little bit brave, a little bit crazy, because we are, like you said, you didn't take the job that made mom and dad happy with the benefits. You became a real estate agent. So a lot of our nature is just to be a little bit reactive and have a little bit of fun, but to really get it to the next level, you got to subscribe to a process. Tell us a little bit about how that's evolved for you and what are some processes and, from being an agent to building a team to now you're running a whole company.
That's a lot of questions.
That's a broad question. So let's narrow it down to when did you figure out you even need processes and how did you know?
Well, when you really want to scale what it is that you're doing. So if you had one client to serve, you might be able to do a great job doing that. But I don't know if anybody's ever waited tables, but I waited a lot of tables before I got into college and through college. But one thing I always noticed is that whenever it was early and people start trickling in, if I'm working one table, my service is not good. Mm-hmm. When my section's full, I'm turning and burning and I'm delivering the service correctly because I've got my system down. And everything's firing. But if I'm just limping here and there, and there's nothing worse in real estate is when you look up and you don't have much going on, right? that's what breeds,
right. That's not real good.
That's where all that happens, where it just is not what we're looking for. So specific to the process, I would say one of the most important things is really qualifying the client, qualifying the seller. Are they a seller? How interested are they in selling, specific to motivation and whatnot. So I would say one of the things that I've gotten particularly good at is really talking with that client and helping them understand those things important specific to their motivation. Because really, if they're not motivated, they won't ultimately end up doing what's necessary for them to sell the property. And that could be making sure that the property's in great shape. That can be, taking a price that's more keeping with the market. Because remember, and one thing we didn't really talk about is this market of destined 30A. We're in a second home market. You've got that
to deal with a lot more than most of us. Because motivation is, you're in a luxury, you're in a market where your product is not one, there's no sense of urgency most of the time. Or is there, and how do you create it?
Well, the sense of urgency can come, but what you're saying is that we're not selling shelter. So these people don't have to have what they're buying. So a lot of times we'll start talking to people, and a lot of times our sales curve is anywhere from like 2 months to 2 years. Okay. I've had some that have taken 5 years to buy something, and I've had some buy the day they walk in, but more times than not, it's a real process, and it might take us 9 to 12 touches before they're ready to do something. So it's understanding what their motivation to buy is, but they don't have to buy. And so it's whenever something may happen, they've got a grandchild, they've been married, some life event changes, they decide that they want to buy. But when it comes time to sell, guess what? They don't have to sell.
Right.
So it's very rare where they say, hey, I've got to, because how many times do we go into a listing presentation and we start dialogue with the seller, and the seller says, well, we don't have to sell it. They love telling you, hey,
yes.
Back off. I'm not motivated. I don't need to do anything. I want to maintain that control, and nobody's going to move me until I'm ready to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is just helping them understand that incrementally, where they don't feel like that they've got to declothe themselves and put themselves in a vulnerable position. And then, of course, sometimes people are very upfront about where they are. It just really just depends on how sure they are.
So a lot of our listeners may know this, and a lot of them probably don't, have a very engaging, not exactly typical process of walking sellers through a listing appointment. I think in this business, a lot of us hear about scripting and what to say and what to do and the dog and pony show and all of that good stuff. And when you get into luxury real estate, they've seen dog and pony shows and they've been scripted their entire lives, or at least long enough that they see it coming and it's not attractive. So that's what I think everybody loves so much about what you do. And without giving too much of it away, give us a little bit of, tell everybody what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, in the end, I want what they want. Because if they don't want to do it, they're not doing it anyway. And it's really easy to, once you've seen it work over and over, don't be attached to the outcome. And I'm not talking about winning, because if there's a game to play, we want to win. Mm-hmm. But it's whatever is best for them. The timing may not be right for them to sell their property. And if the timing's not right, or mom and dad aren't on the same page, or whatever the case may be, is making sure that they have the room to breathe, certainly giving them permission to say no, or, hey, the time's not right. And that they understand that we're not living and breathing by any one deal. This is about them, whether they're ready to sell now or in 2 years, or whenever that time comes, we're going to be here to serve them.
Well, we're living and breathing by accomplishing their goals for them. That's it. Our goal is their goal. Our goal is not to sell a house if they don't want to sell it. If they do, it is. Here's the information. Empower them with the information, and asking them the questions that put them in the right frame of mind that they may not have asked themselves yet to understand where they are. So give us a little, I don't know if you want to elaborate on some questions you like to ask, or walk us through your listing appointment, or do you even call it a listing appointment? And I forget what, I've only interviewed Jack 3 times, but he has a much better name for it than listing appointment. I think it's do you remember, what is it? Do you remember? He has a great name. Maybe it's just listing. Or do you remember, Isaac?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Is it? Sorry, Jack. This is terrible. We might even edit this out.
The equivalent.
Don't edit it.
The equivalent of whatever we may call it. It's
right. But
really,
yeah, give us some, because you're a very engaging, you're a very charismatic, fun, but you're also a listener and you're engaging. So tell us how you bring that into your listing appointment, or bring that in with clients.
Well, I like to do it in a 2-step process. So whenever I'm talking with them and they have determined that it's something that they really want to pursue, they want to go through the process and see where they stand with it. I like to do it in 2 steps. So the first step is really just going to visit the property. I want to gain access to the property. I want to assess the property. And hopefully, if they are there, I want them to walk me through it. I know a lot of people in primary markets are like, well, of course they're there. Well, a lot of times our owners they live elsewhere. They live where you live. They live, somewhere else other than where this property is.
Half of your owners live where I live.
Yeah, Atlanta pays the bills.
Yes.
No question. But it's going through that process. And so we like for them to be there, but it's to get them to walk us through the property, obviously set these expectations on the call. But once we get there, it's figuring out really, do they really want to sell it? And one of the things that we do is we go through, we we want to understand the property well, but we want them to walk us through, but we want to understand where their motivation is. So when I go through it and talk about a mistake, one of the mistakes I've made before is, and I had a guy give me some feedback months after he ended up giving a listing to someone else, and he said that I didn't ooh and ah enough over his home. And I'm like, okay.
You're still taking that one in.
Yeah, it is. And I'll never forget, I don't remember the words, and I know Jenny does not like to get quoted, but I do remember her telling me one thing, and she said, you can never make a mistake by really being complimentary over their home. Now, of course, I said the home was nice.
Now,
but this guy wanted...
Jenny Pruitt, by the way, is who we're quoting.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you know, what's the downside of saying someone looks nice or their home's beautiful or whatever the case may be? But a lot of times, our owners have such high expectations on what their property's worth that I'm just a lot of times trying to get them out of the tree. So a lot of the reason why I don't want to go ooh and ah, or at least in my mind is so that I didn't want to have to talk them out of the tree so high. But that's not it at all. But again, back to the meeting is walking through the home, getting through and saying, wow, you know, this is a beautiful home or this is a great location. Are you sure you want to sell it? Now, we're not attached to the outcome. We want what they want. But that's a good way to ask them, hey, are you sure you want to sell it? Listen to what they have to say. I mean, that's the first question. And then I'll ask them, you know, various different things is, you know, really I like to find out on a scale from 1 to 10, where would they put themselves on the scale of interested in sell? Now, sometimes they'll come back with a 5, sometimes they'll come back with an 8, but it gives you that gauge. So that's some of the, you know, first couple of questions I like asking.
Are you sure you want to sell it? I mean, do they ever say, are you ever the only agent that ever asked them that? I would think so, because most agents just want you to be sure, and they're going to convince you if you're not. Would you? You
know, I don't think that's a question most people get. You know, Are you sure you want to sell it?
You sure you want to sell it? We need to be sure you want to sell it.
And that's a lot of it. Is a lot of my questions are questions that I don't think a lot of people ask, and I want them to be different, right? Because I don't want, you know, anything that, you know, our dialogue to just blend in with everybody else's. So I like to come up with creative ways to ask questions that will really stand out and resonate with the seller. And so one of the other things that I'll do, you know, is in that initial meeting, which again represents a very limited window of time that is original to your process with them, is where you don't have to have all the answers and you can ask some of these questions. I mean, because if you remember, there was a time where maybe you would sit down with them for the first time, discover the property, and have a pricing strategy and a marketing plan put together, which is obviously not the way to do that now, but is setting a whole nother time to discuss pricing. Right now, you're just gathering information, qualifying the seller, and saying, hey, one of the things, you know, says, hey, would it bother you if you own this home next year? And a lot of times it's just listening to what they have to say. So, I mean, again, nothing earth-shattering there, but it's asking that question at the right time.
Well, it's kind of like in every situation, negotiating or not, I love Chris Voss, never split the difference. And what you just made me think of is in every situation, there's the quote, black swan. There's always stuff we don't know about. And it sure is good to know up front. And when you're asking the question and not giving the pitches, first of all, your dialogue's not going to blend in with the others. And secondly, you're going to get the answers in the black swan way up front that's actually going to help you help them.
Absolutely.
So,
well, and it's asking those open-ended questions about that. So I think a lot of agents go in that first meeting and expect to have all the answers. You know, I literally try to go into that first meeting with as few expectations about them or as their home as possible. At the same time, I want to gather as much information that's necessary, but and then really set it up for the second meeting to get them back into the office. So,
I mean, see, there you go, flipping it from getting in the business to going after the business backwards to going after the listings backwards. I love it. Spin it, flip it, whatever. Maybe we'll call the podcast that. So what is your biggest success that you're most proud of in being in real estate or in your real estate career?
I mean, I would say just overarching success that I'm most grateful for. I would say really owning and operating the top real estate company in our area, doing the most volume with, we've got 55 agents that work with our company. And we will do this year, we're on track to do about 800 million in sales. So that's an average. I mean, our goal is to take our average agent to $15 million.
That's huge.
And
so what is it right now? What is that number?
It's huge. Like 13.5 to 14.
Huge.
And so you wouldn't think $1 million would be that much, but when you're carrying it over 55 agents, it is.
Most offices, it's like $1 million to $2 million an agent. Most top offices, it's $1 million to $2 million. So at 14 and 13 million, that's pretty huge.
It is. And it really kind of getting into this business, I hate to say it by accident, in terms of the brokerage businesses, is the real benefit to us is to be able to create an atmosphere and an environment to work within where you're able to create your own culture. So, versus the unethical, we get associated with used car salespeople, real estate brokers are not especially well thought of. And so we really were very selective about the people that we brought in within our company so that we can do business with the people that we really wanted to do business with. Over half of our transactions, half of our volume is taking place within the agents within our company. So that is, I would say, looking back, and there's a lot of things that I'm really thankful to be a part of, but to really have the grouping of people that we have, the family that we've got, and the way that we have built our business, I would say is what we're most happy about, and what our biggest success is in helping those people become more and more successful. It's been a game changer for all of us within our company.
Well, it's a game changer for our industry. What is your biggest aha? You've been in this business since 1996. What's been your biggest aha over the years about this business and being successful in it?
I think really after being in the business for a decade, and certainly two, I think it's understanding the value of your past clients and making sure that you are staying in front of them, that you're talking with them on a regular basis. I've talked with Carrie earlier. Carrie, she's been here 4 years. She came from Summit out of Park City, Summit Sotheby's. And I asked her, I said, do you think that if you had to turn off any new business and could only survive on past clients, could you do it? How about that one? So
that's you see, you've got all the good questions.
Well, I mean, and if you could not pursue those, the new business or the shiny objects or whatever the case may be, how would you do it? And really just making sure you're taking the time with those past clients. I mean, so many people, what would you tell someone that was just getting into the business? And then what would you tell someone that's been in the business for 10 years or longer? So
to answer those questions for us.
Well, I think, if you're new into the business, it's really, the hustle, typically wins a lot. I would say associate yourself with a great company so that the wins that the company is making that you can borrow and use the success of that company, leverage the success of that company instead of saying, hey, this is what I've done, this is what we've done. Make sure you're in a scenario where you can do that as a new agent. That's key. I would understand and subscribe to a process of no matter if you're working with the buy side or the sell side, is really making sure that you've got a rhyme and reason to how you're doing it. There's really very little accountability in our business. There's very little training to speak of. You just want to make sure you're in a scenario where you can really learn from people that have been doing it long enough to know what it is that they're doing that's working. And
doing it well, because there's a lot of people that have been doing it, but you got to be doing it well, doing it right. Well, I always ask, does the company or broker you work with matter? But we know the answer to that, and you just gave us the perfect example. You didn't answer the other half of your question, though, about what would you tell agents who have been in the business 10 or more years? Yeah, you were going to let me totally miss that. And Isaac, what are you doing in here? Come on, everybody. Who's looking out for me? So what would you say?
And I was going to bring it back to it.
Oh, good. Bring it back. Bring it back.
I mean, I think it's really is understanding what fundamentals, because really when you go back to it, it's always fundamental. And I think we get distracted by those shiny objects. And sure, with technology and different things, you can leverage yourself even more. But what are the fundamentals that you can go back to that did get you here? Identify what they are, isolate, and then pour more of your concentrated self into those to make sure that you are allocating enough of your bandwidth to those things that work.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of things that work, do you have a tool? I mean, you're good at tools. Like, I know the video bomb, that might be it. But what is your favorite tool that you think is most effective in your business? Is it a CRM? Is it an app? Is it the bomb videos? Is it other than your cell phone?
I mean, it's just a favorite tool in general.
Yeah. Or do you have a favorite CRM? CRMs are always, everybody wants to know a CRM. That's a hot topic.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with one, and I'm making some headway with it. I'm a little apprehensive to share too much about it just yet. But again, if we go back to past clients and how important they are, the people that are important to us, what is the best CRM to manage that relationship? As of now, I'm convinced that it's contactually. It's been good for me. I'm very visual, and to be able to put people into buckets and set timelines where
they make it fun.
I'm talking to someone. Yeah, I like it. I think it's got, some gaps here and there, but I think all in all, as far as a relationship management software, I think it's
good for that. Yeah, I've been using it also. It's really good for that. Workflow, I need to work on, and I think it does that, but I got to engage that part of it. But what is the best CRM? Like the one you use, which contactually makes it easy to use. So if there were, well, actually I gotta, which one do I want to ask you first? I'm going to add in one more question here. So you're really good at relationships. You run a company. You've been in business for a long time. How do you maximize those relationships that you have? Do you focus on a few? Do you focus on many? Do you have a way of doing both?
Golly, Jere, that's how do I maximize?
I knew I'd put him on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really having a balanced, having some balance and understanding what the rhyme and reason is to how you're doing it. So contextually, as we just spoke about, really helps doing that. So let's say, for instance, I want to create a bucket of people. And let's say it's, let's say it is past clients. How often do I want to be talking to past clients? Well, I might dice those up a couple of different ways, but let's just say the clients that I want to talk to past clients I want to talk to every 45 days. So I would say the best way to go about doing that is through those buckets to figure, so that you have to wake up every morning, it's Groundhog Day, and you remember who you need to talk with and all that kind of thing. It's just to kind of help balance that out and get the cadence right, and make sure that you've got those goals set up in a way that you can actually attain them. Because there's nothing worse than start getting backlogged than doing that. But I've seen a lot of brokers that want to go to that next level, that they're going to that fundamental is the people that they've worked with that are already fans of theirs, that they've already got substantial trust with, and they've completed transactions with them. So it's really, how do I make great money doing what I love and flip-flops every day? I would say that it is talking with the people that I've already transacted business with by getting referrals and more business from them. Well,
that's always the best business you can do too. All right. So
how long have you been in the business, Jere?
15. Is it? I don't know. 15 years. I can't believe it's 15 years. I think it's 15, 14. Yeah. What's that? Are you trying to interview me? No, I'm kidding. No, I love this. Ask me the question again.
Well, and it's really understanding that that's a void we all have, and we can always do a much better job with that. So if we just go back to those people.
So true. Well, and just appreciating our fans and the people who love us can go so far, and there's so much fun in creating, you remember my speech on developing influence, and the more influence you have with people, the more traction you can get with that, and the more fun it is because they trust you and enjoy you, and vice versa. One book, is there one, you know what mine is, everybody knows what mine is, but is there one book you would recommend that we read that we would get the most out of?
This is one that, look, the fact is your favorite book is my favorite book. So let's just turn that page and move beyond
Never
it.
Split the Difference.
Would say,
right.
Never Split the Difference. That's a great book. And I would say that has been a game changer, is understanding a lot of those key concepts. There's just gold nuggets everywhere in that book. Love that book. But I would say one of the books that I do love best, two of them. The first one, which I think I've got, is The Traveler's Gift, which is by Andy Andrews, which is actually what our company's core values is based on. But that one is a sort of fictional book that's got short stories in it. But the real meat, and I would say my favorite book is The 7 Decisions by Andy Andrews, which just elaborates in great detail on some key aspects about life and certainly translating into business. I would say is a great book.
So those are both by the same guy? Were those both? All right, so tell us a little bit about either one. You told us about The Traveler's Gift. It's short stories, but what's the core message of the book?
Perspective. I mean, it's really just all based upon perspective and understanding that we have to take responsibility for our actions. The buck stops here. We learn to forgive. We're a company of action. I mean, all those things are built into that book, and then it's why, how, and everything that surrounds that. So, it's really a lot of it has to do with the stories that we tell ourselves, like when we're in a tough spot or it's going to the next level. It's what are we telling ourselves to get out of something or into something else that is the direction in which we need to go so that we are evolving in the right direction. And I would say that those books are both substantial. I would start with The Traveler's Gift. You could do that in one, maybe 2 sittings. And then The 7 Decisions is a bigger commitment.
Awesome. Okay. I like 7 Decisions. I can just read the table of contents and I'll be good.
Yeah, right. Well, and I can start books, but finishing them is difficult. So just one little tweak is instead of saying, hey, what book am I going to start reading? I'll say, hey, what's the next book I'm going to finish?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, see, like the questions. You've got all the right questions. I love it. You don't even tell people.
What's the next book I'm going to finish?
I love you tell people to do things by asking the right question. What's the next book you're going to finish? Like, love that. So what else? I almost know you too well because I know so much of your golden nuggets and the listing and the perspective and all the great things about you. So what else can you give us that we haven't touched on, or there may be too much?
That's a pretty broad stroke question.
That was the point.
What else can I offer you?
I can rephrase it to bring it home for you, or unless you've already got something.
No, I'd say go ahead and rephrase it.
So here's what I would say. I just wanted to leave the door open in case we haven't covered something, which I know we haven't, but I'll think of it, and I'll be emailing you to come back on. But what is the one thing of all the stuff we talked about today, what is one thing that you would hope that we all, if there was only one thing we were going to bring from this message, what would it be from this interview conversation?
I think, I've listened to many of your podcasts and I've heard that question asked. I love that question. It's kind of like, and some of it could be is what's trending, what are you listening to? And I think the key is keep the good stuff coming in. You got to guard your ear gate and your eye gate and make sure that you're hearing the right stuff. And a good way to do that is by being in control of that. One of the things that I love that Dennis said is, that was on your podcast is control the controllables. Well, that's one of those things that you can control is what you're reading and what you're taking in. So I would just, be intentional about what that is. And I would also say that, if you want to take your business to the next level, and I'll just hang my hat on, I've already said it 2 or 3 times, come up with a process, a rhyme and reason, and an attack plan on how you're going to do the best job you can possibly do staying in touch with your past clients. That's it.
That was awesome. All right, bye. We're done.
What is your plan? Do you have a plan? Are you by the seat of your pants? But the bottom line is just be intentional about what that is.
So we're closing out on that, but before we do, I'm going to get you to elaborate, because here's the big question. That is just a great, talk about perspective, keep perspective on doing that and how important that is. And that means you've got to work on your business, not in it, to do that. What's a good process to create your process? Is it sitting down with team members and talking through everything that happens? Is it sitting down by yourself? Or is it a combination of the two? And which one do you do first, or how do you do it?
I think it's really, you start with, if we're talking about past clients, you start with your list of past clients, start with them. And when you start looking at your past clients, you're going to realize how long it's been you've talked to a lot of people that at one time you had a tremendous amount of value with, you loved spending time with them. They were valuable to your business, either through transactionally or they referred you business. So I would say it's really going back to those lists of clients and looking at them and then figuring out what you're going to do with them. So it's not, what am I going to do with this person or this person? That might be working in your business, but on your business is what the plan is to do with that. And it's there's more than one way to skin the cat, but I would start there. A lot of it is, here's the plan from 1 to 5. Maybe we can talk about that next time. But I think it's really just understand the void that has been created by having distance between you and all those people that you've done business with, and look at that and just understand how significant it is, and spend time thinking about that and realizing if you were doing a better job, and we all can, how valuable that would be, and what a huge game changer that would be, is to find a great plan of attack to
Greg
deal
Lund
with your
has.
past
Yeah, Greg Lund does a great job of that.
Well, he had to go take it back, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Which he's going to be on.
Hey, I'm taking that
soon.
back.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we'll be talking to Greg about. So maybe we'll put you and then Greg. What do you think?
But think about that.
We shouldn't be making those calls so early, on the air. But anyway.
But how huge is the step just to simply identify that? Yeah. And then spend time with that. And then it's up to people to figure out what they're going to do with that. But I think that that's something that we could probably collaborate more on, and be specific, because, nobody's got it perfect, but some people have it good and some people have it great. So and how do you take it from good to great? But I think a lot of it is for those people that have been in the business for any period of time, and those that are early in the process, the same is still true.
Well, yeah, you get to start from the beginning and learn from our mistakes, everybody else's mistakes. Not we don't make mistakes, everybody else's mistakes.
That's it.
All right. Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.